Okay. In this video, I'm going to talk about your final set of points, which is the final 35% of your grade. And I'm going to talk about how these points will be issued and give you expectations for Furman Engaged. First, these are the three components that we are grading. The quality of the work itself, which is how everything else has been graded so far. So I don't anticipate that you'll have any questions about that. Then how your work is displayed in the gallery, which is to say, are the frames or shelves or pedestals professional looking, or do they look flimsy and cheap? Are things placed in an organized way? Do paintings have similar amounts of space between them or identical amounts of space between them? Are pedestals just all over the place, or are they organized? Is basically, are you using your space thoughtfully and in a professional looking way? And of course, we'll all help you with that. Finally, we're going to grade your actual Furman Engaged presentation, which is what I'll be talking about in a second. So before I go into that, I just wanted to say that these three components will actually be graded by all of the full-time art department faculty. So that's studio art and art history. That's an important difference. So related to the Furman Engaged presentations, you're going to give a 15-minute, or you're going to be standing in front of everyone for 15 minutes. That's a 10-minute presentation with 5-minute Q&A. This will happen in the lecture room, and although it will mostly be the art department faculty and your peers from the art department, it is not uncommon for people to invite family and friends or other advisors from other departments, or just faculty with whom you have a good professional relationship with and you want to bring them in, or they want to come visit you. Anybody is welcome to come to these, is what I'm saying, I guess. Logistically, you have been placed in one of the studio art sessions. There's a link to the schedule on Moodle. If you don't know which session you're in, you can find that out. Typically, we go in the order that is listed in the program. So whatever it says on the website, that's the order we're going to go in. So we can't give you a specific time. Typically, these panels don't have specific times, but just panel times, and then presentations come when they come. So if someone wants to come to your presentation, it's best if they come to the whole panel. That way they're not interrupting other people's presentations. Okay. In your 10-minute presentation, you will show high quality images of your work, which you should already have. And then whatever kinds of supplemental materials or developmental materials you think are helpful in explaining how your project was developed or the process of making it. And as I mentioned before, afterwards there will be a short Q&A. As with all of our studio seminar work, you will upload your presentation to the Box folder, which I'll talk more about in a little bit, but it's no different than anything else you've uploaded to Box. If you want to see examples of previous students' presentation decks, those are on Moodle, a Moodle page called Studio Art, which you all have access to. Whether you've seen it or gone there to look or not, I do not know. Now I guess I'll talk about actually what the presentation is. Like all presentations, you want to start out with an intro. The slide says it should be 1 minute, but it really doesn't need to be 1 minute. You will tell us your name, your major, which for all of you, basically it'll be studio art. And perhaps if there is any personal information that's relevant to your project, if it's information that isn't relevant, don't mention it, obviously. And then you will briefly tell us why your project is important, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. And then you're going to explain what your vision is. In other words, this is the brief statement that you wrote at the top of your contract. So you could start out your presentation by saying, if your name was Michael May, you could say, for example, my name is Michael May. I'm a studio art major with an emphasis in painting. I want to show, or I want my work to highlight the issues with health and safety in the United States, et cetera, et cetera. This is all on your contract. You've written all this stuff out before, so it shouldn't be too terribly difficult. Then when it comes to actually giving your talk, this should easily be the bulk of your talk. 8 minutes would not be probably enough, or 8 minutes wouldn't be long enough for a 10-minute presentation, because you really don't need 1 minute to do an intro. So this should be about 9 minutes of your talk, maybe even a little bit more. And this is where you explain how your voice coalesces with your vision. In other words, how does your artwork meet the goals that you listed just a moment before? Here you can point out specific parts of your artwork. You can literally point to specific parts of your artwork and say how that thing you did or going toward the goal that you stated previously. And you're going to do this for every artwork you made. So every artwork may have multiple parts to it. Anything that someone would look at the painting or design or photograph or whatever and say, why is this here? You'll point to it and you'll say, this is here because X, Y, or Z. So if you made a website, this is the place to showcase that. And you would do that through screenshots. Don't click over to a web browser and then bounce around your website. This is a presentation. It's not a tutorial. We're interested in the design of your website or whatever, not the actual functionality of your website. And then another part to this body component to your presentation is you need to talk about how your work is relevant to the community, whatever that looks like. That could be, like in the example I gave, health and safety in the United States. So that would be community as a nation. Could be regional, local. It doesn't have to be, that traditional form of community. It could also be, racial if your work is more social, or mental health, or whatever that is. People who deal with the same things you deal with, or whatever that looks like for you, whatever community means for your artwork, you would explain how this work benefits that community. You also need to talk about the artists who have influenced your work, even if they're musicians or filmmakers or whatever. You show examples of their work or screenshots of their work. If there's no visuals to show, then maybe you can put the lyric of the song or a picture of the artist, the musical artist, or whatever. Finally, you're going to show us a photograph of your work hung in the galleries. This should be as nice a photograph as you can possibly get. You may need to edit the lighting or whatever, or edit the white balance to make it look nice. Your artwork is the most important thing, but for us, while we're in the lecture room, it helps us to see the work on display, so we can get a sense of the display of your work, framing, pedestals, whatever, and the context of your work. The conclusion, again, like the intro, does not need to be one entire minute. You'll essentially summarize your goals and how they're important to the community. And like in any written paper, the conclusion is not a space for you to introduce new material. A few kind of pro tips that you can think about or be aware of. First of all, if you are told to give a 10-minute presentation at any point in your life, that means your presentation should be 10 minutes, not 9 minutes, not 11 minutes. It should be 10 minutes. If you go 30 seconds or so on either side of the 10 minutes, that's fine. But don't go under 9.5 minutes, and don't go over 10.5 minutes. This is something you're graded on, and it will have a big impact on your grade. It's a really easy thing for us to say that was a mistake, point deduction. Another pro tip is if you are writing, if you're going to give a presentation that's 10 minutes long, you should write it out word for word, the whole thing. Use standard margins, standard 12-point font, double space. If you write a 5-page paper, that will be a 10-minute talk, roughly. And then finally, you just practice. Write it all out word for word, read it over and over and over, and then do it so much you get to the point where you don't need the words in front of you anymore. Time it also so you know that it's staying under 10 minutes. And then you want to just stay on brand, so to speak. So you want to make sure your presentation is focused on like that vision and voice, and how your voice or the way your work looks, what's in your work, how that meets the goals of your vision. I guess the last thing is, dress like a professional. The last thing is your submission to Box. Just like everything else we've done in this class, you will save your presentation. In this case, it'll be a PowerPoint or a PDF. And then you just drop that in the Box folder, just like everything else you've done. And it would be great if you added your name and Furman Engaged as seen in the slide. That's really it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sure I didn't get everything covered, so I wouldn't be shocked if you had questions. Okay, let me know if you need anything. Thank you.